My family used to call me the thrift store girl. At Easter, my sister discovered I had $9 million, and they insisted I give it all to her. I couldn't stop laughing and slammed the door right in their faces. Growing up, I learned early on that I was the family disappointment. My name is Jennifer Hayes, and for my entire life, I've been the punchline of every joke my family told about failure. My sister Victoria got the looks, the charm, and apparently all the brain cells, too. According to our mother, I got hand-me-downs and lectures about being practical. The nickname started when I was 14. Victoria needed a dress for homecoming, something sparkly and expensive from Nordstrom. I needed clothes for school because I'd outgrown everything over the summer. Mom took us both shopping, but the budget only stretched so far. Victoria walked out with a $300 dress that she wore once. I got dropped off at Goodwill with $40 and told to make it work. I found a vintage leather jacket that day. Genuine leather, barely worn for $12. I was so proud of it. I wore it to school the next Monday, and when I got home, Victoria was laughing with her friends in the living room. She saw me and announced loudly, "Look, everybody, it's the thrift store girl. Did you get a good deal on those sad little secondhand dreams?" Her friends laughed. Mom, who was in the kitchen, said nothing to defend me. Dad was on a business trip, which was pretty much his permanent state. The name stuck. Family dinners, holidays, random Tuesday nights, whenever Victoria wanted to put me in my place, out came thrift store girl. I developed thick skin out of necessity. While Victoria was pledging sororities at USC and posting endless photos of beach parties, I was working 2 jobs to put myself through community college. I lived in a studio apartment that smelled like the Indian restaurant downstairs. I ate ramen and learned to hem my own clothes. Every dollar mattered because nobody was handing me anything. My parents paid for Victoria's education completely. When I asked if they could help with even a semester of tuition, Dad said something about teaching me the value of hard work. Victoria already had her degree handed to her on a silver platter, but apparently I needed character building. I majored in computer science because I was good at it and because the jobs paid well. While my classmates were socializing, I was coding. I built websites for small businesses, created apps, learned everything I could about software development. I graduated with honors and no debt, which felt like winning a war nobody knew I was fighting. My first real job was at a tech startup in Austin. The pay was decent, and I was finally able to breathe without checking my bank account every 5 minutes. I rented a 1-bedroom apartment and bought my first new clothes in years. I sent a photo to the family chat, proud of my little space. Victoria responded, "Cute." Very minimalist. I guess thrift store furniture is making a comeback. She had bought everything new. The comment stung less than it would have years before, but it still landed. I'd moved 500 miles away, partly for the job, partly to escape the constant comparisons. Austin felt like a fresh start, a place where nobody knew me as the disappointment daughter. I could be just Jennifer, the developer who wrote clean code and met her deadlines. My apartment was in a complex near the office, nothing fancy but mine. I had a balcony overlooking a courtyard where other young professionals gathered on weekends. I made friends slowly, coworkers, mostly people who appreciated my dry humor and didn't know anything about my family dynamics. When they asked about my background, I kept it vague. Parents in California, one sister not close. The startup culture was intense but exciting. We had ping pong tables and free snacks, sure, but we also had purpose. Everyone there believed we were building something important. Late nights felt less like sacrifice and more like investment. I was learning from people who had sold companies before, who understood the game we were playing. I started saving aggressively. Every paycheck I calculated exactly what I needed for rent, utilities, food, and a small entertainment budget. Everything else went into savings or investments. My coworkers thought I was paranoid. They spent money on nice dinners and weekend trips. I remembered being broke too well to be careless with money. Now, around this time, Victoria announced she was pregnant. The family chat exploded with excitement. Mom was over the moon about becoming a grandmother. Dad started talking about legacy and family continuation. I sent my congratulations and a gift card, which Victoria acknowledged with a generic thank you days later. The baby shower was in California. I couldn't afford the plane ticket and the gift and the time off work, so I chose work. Victoria posted photos from the event, elaborate decorations, designer. Baby clothes, a cake that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Mom commented on every photo about how beautiful everything was, how blessed they were. I worked overtime that weekend and got a significant chunk of a difficult project completed. My boss noticed. That notice led to more responsibility, which led to more money, which led to more opportunities. The startup was where I met Brian Cooper, one of the co-founders. He was brilliant, awkward, and completely obsessed with developing software that would revolutionize data security. I started as a junior developer, but Brian saw something in my work. Within a year, I was leading my own team. Within 2 years, I was his partner in every sense that mattered professionally. Brian reminded me of myself in some ways underestimated, driven by something deeper than money. He'd been the weird kid in school, the one who coded instead of socializing. His parents had wanted him to be a doctor. He disappointed them by dropping out of medical school to start a tech company. We bonded over family expectations and the freedom of disappointing people who never really knew us anyway. Our working relationship was pure chemistry. He'd sketch out impossible ideas on whiteboards, and I'd figure out how to make them real. We balanced each other, his vision, my execution. The rest of the team noticed. They started calling us the Brain Trust, which was both flattering and slightly annoying. We worked 80-hour weeks. We survived on coffee and determination. Brian had the vision, but I had the practical skills to make it reality. Our software was good, better than good. It was revolutionary. Companies started licensing it. Small contracts became bigger ones. Tech giants started paying attention. The first time a Fortune 500 company licensed our software, Brian and I went to a dive bar to celebrate. We weren't champagne people. We ordered whiskey and sat in a booth that smelled like decades of spilled beer, grinning at each other like idiots. "We'd done it," he said. "We built something that mattered." "Your family must be proud," Brian said, slightly drunk. I laughed. "They don't really understand what I do. My sister thinks I fix computers." Seriously, she once asked me if I could help her printer connect to Wi-Fi. When I tried to explain what I actually do, she got bored and changed the subject to her kitchen renovation. Brian shook his head. "My parents still ask when I'm going back to medical school. Some people can't see past their own expectations." We clinked glasses to that, to being seen by people who mattered, even if our families weren't among them. As the company grew, so did my role. I wasn't just coding anymore. I was making strategic decisions, hiring team members, negotiating contracts. Brian trusted me completely, which meant I had equity that reflected my value. When we formalized the ownership structure, I ended up with 40% of the company. Brian had 40%. Early investors and key employees split the remaining 20%. I didn't tell my family much about work, and why would I? Every time I mentioned a success, Victoria found a way to diminish it. When I told them I'd been promoted to senior developer, she announced her engagement to Chad Whitmore, whose father owned a chain of car dealerships. The conversation immediately shifted to her princess-cut diamond and destination wedding plans. The engagement happened during my second year at the startup. Victoria announced it in the family chat with a photo of her hand displaying an enormous ring, 2 carats at least, maybe 3. Chad had proposed during a beach vacation in Maui, getting down on one knee at sunset while a photographer captured every moment. The photos were professionally edited and posted within hours. Mom called me crying with joy. "Your sister is so blessed," she kept saying. "Chad is such a catch. He's going to take such good care of her." I was debugging a critical system failure when she called. I had 3 developers waiting for my input and a client presentation in 2 hours. I said, "Congratulations," and that I had to go. Mom sounded disappointed that I wasn't more excited. The truth was, I felt nothing. Victoria's happiness had stopped mattering to me somewhere along the way. Her life was her life. Mine was mine. The only intersection was obligation. I went to that wedding alone. I was 25, wearing a dress I'd actually bought new from a department store, and I still felt invisible. Victoria's bridesmaids were all sorority sisters who looked like they'd stepped out of a magazine. I sat at a table with distant cousins who spent the whole reception on their phones. The wedding was at a resort in Napa Valley, 3 days of events leading up to the ceremony. I could only afford to come for the wedding day itself, flying in Saturday morning and leaving directly from the reception that evening. I missed the welcome dinner and the morning after brunch. Nobody seemed to notice. The ceremony was beautiful in that expensive, impersonal way. White roses everywhere, a string quartet. Victoria looked stunning in a designer gown that probably cost more than my car. Chad cried when she walked down the aisle, which the videographer captured from multiple angles. I sat 17 rows back on the bride's side between a great aunt who kept asking who I was and a family friend I'd never met. When Victoria passed by on her way down the aisle, her eyes slid right over me. I don't think she even registered that I was there. During the toasts, Victoria's maid of honor talked about how Victoria had always been destined for greatness, how she'd always known exactly what she wanted and how to get it. Dad's toast mentioned how proud he was of his successful daughters, but he only gave examples about Victoria. Mom cried tears of joy. I drank champagne and wondered why I bothered to come. The reception was at a vineyard golden hour light, making everything look like a movie. I tried to mingle, but kept finding myself in conversations where I was the odd one out. Victoria's friends talked about spin classes and vacation homes. Chad's family discussed golf handicaps and investment properties. I nursed my drink and checked my phone, reading work emails to have something to do. At one point, a groomsman approached me. He was drunk and friendly, asking how I knew the couple. When I said I was Victoria's sister, he looked genuinely surprised. Really, she never mentioned having a sister. We're not close, I said. He nodded, like that explained everything, and wandered off to find someone more interesting to talk to. I left during the dancing, claiming I needed to catch my flight. Nobody tried to stop me. I took an Uber straight to the airport, changed into comfortable clothes in a bathroom, and worked on code for a project that was due Monday while waiting for my red eye. It was a better use of my time than pretending to enjoy a party where I didn't belong. Flying back to Austin, I felt relieved. I'd fulfilled my family obligation. I'd shown up. I'd been polite. Now I could go back to my real life, the one I was building brick by brick, the one that actually mattered. I texted Victoria from the airport with another congratulations message. She responded with a heart emoji. That was the extent of our communication. Victoria announced her first pregnancy about 8 months after the wedding. By then, she'd fully committed to the lifestyle influencer path, documenting everything online: gender reveal parties, nursery design, posts, maternity photo shoots. Her pregnancy was a carefully curated production. She had Lily in the summer, and the birth announcement got thousands of likes. I sent a gift practical baby items from the registry. Victoria posted a generic thank you story on Instagram, tagging everyone who'd sent gifts. I wasn't sure if she even knew which items came from me specifically. The thing about being underestimated is that nobody watches you. While my family was obsessing over Victoria's Instagram perfect life, I was building something real. Brian and I had developed software that was getting serious attention. Tech companies were not just licensing it anymore. They wanted to buy the entire company. 3 months after the wedding, I got a call from Brian at midnight. A major corporation wanted to meet with us about an acquisition. He could barely get the words out, his voice shaking with excitement and fear. We'd known this moment might come, but theoretical possibilities hitting reality felt different. We met with their team the following week, corporate executives in expensive suits asking technical questions and financial projections. Brian handled the vision questions. I handled the technical details and practical implementation. We were a good team. By the end of the meeting, they were more interested than when we'd started. The paperwork started flowing. NDAs, preliminary offers, due diligence requests. Our lawyer, a woman Brian had worked with before, walked us through every step. She was blunt about the odds. Most acquisitions fell apart. Don't get excited until the money's in the bank. I followed her advice. I didn't tell my family. I didn't tell my friends. I just kept working, kept living in my modest apartment, kept saving money like I always had. If the deal happened, great. If it didn't, I still had a good job and equity in a growing company. I was 26 when the first serious offer came in $15 million. Brian and I each owned 40% of the company, with 20% split among early investors. My share would be $6 million. I couldn't process the number. It felt like monopoly money. Brian wanted to wait. He thought we could build something bigger. I trusted his instinct. It had been right about everything else. We turned down the offer and kept working. 6 months later, another offer came in, $25 million, then $35. We kept saying no. Each rejection felt like gambling. What if we peaked? What if we turned down life-changing money only to watch the company collapse? I lay awake some nights doing math, calculating how long $6 million would last, how different my life could be. But Brian's confidence was contagious. He showed me projections, market analysis, growth potential. Our software was becoming industry standard. Companies weren't just licensing it, they were building entire security infrastructures around it. We were becoming essential. That meant leverage. We hired a CFO who'd worked with successful exits before. She was in her 50s, sharp as a knife, and took no nonsense from anyone. She looked at our books, our contracts, our growth trajectory, and told us we were idiots for considering anything less than 50 million. You're not just selling software, she said. You're selling the future of data security. Price accordingly. So we did. When the next offer came in at 40 million, we countered with 80. They laughed. We walked away. 3 companies were interested by then, which meant competition. Competition meant better terms. I still lived in my modest apartment. I still shopped sales. The money was theoretical, tied up in a company that existed mostly as code and contracts. My family had no idea because I never told them. What was the point? They'd already decided who I was. Victoria had quit her marketing job after the wedding. Chad's family money meant she didn't have to work. She spent her days doing yoga, getting her nails done, and posting about her blessed life online. Mom would forward me Victoria's posts with captions like, "Your sister looks so happy." The implication was clear. Victoria had won at life, and I was still struggling. By this time, Victoria had Matthew, her second child. 2 kids before 30, both planned, both documented extensively on social media. Her life looked perfect, at least in the carefully curated squares of Instagram, beautiful house, beautiful children, beautiful wardrobe. She'd become a lifestyle influencer with a modest following, getting free products in exchange for posts. What I didn't know then was that Chad's financial situation wasn't as stable as it appeared. His father owned multiple dealerships, yes, but Chad had insisted on running his own location independently to prove himself. He'd taken out significant loans to buy into a franchise, convinced he could make it profitable. His pride wouldn't let him ask his father for help when things started going south, but I wouldn't learn any of this until much later. I watched from a distance, both fascinated and repelled. How much of it was real? Did she actually love the life she portrayed, or was she just as trapped as I'd been performing for an audience that demanded perfection I didn't ask? We barely spoke outside of obligatory holiday texts. She was busy with her perfect life. I was busy building something real. Christmas that year, Mom tried to organize a family gathering. I declined, citing work obligations. It was partly true we were in the middle of intense negotiations, but mostly I just didn't want to spend a week watching Victoria's highlight reel while being reminded of my own perceived inadequacy. Mom was hurt. She sent a long email about family being important, about not letting work consume my life, about how I was missing out on watching my niece and nephew grow up. She didn't mention that I'd only met Matthew twice, both times briefly. She didn't mention that Victoria never asked about my life or expressed interest in visiting me. The responsibility for maintaining family connection was apparently mine alone. I didn't respond to the email. I worked through Christmas and felt fine about it. Thanksgiving that year was particularly brutal. Victoria and Chad had just bought a house in a gated community. She spent the entire dinner talking about crown molding and granite countertops. When Mom asked about my life, I mentioned we were in acquisition talks. "That's nice, dear Mom," said vaguely. "Victoria, tell us more about the master bathroom renovation." I stopped trying to share after that. The final offer came in February, $85 million for complete acquisition. Brian called me at 11 at night, his voice shaking. The buyers were serious. They wanted our software, our team, our vision. This was it, the moment we'd been working toward for 6 years. My share would be $34 million. After taxes and paying back early investors who'd taken reduced returns, I'd walk away with about $9 million in liquid assets. $9 million. I sat on my apartment floor and stared at the wall for an hour. Brian and I signed the papers in March. The money hit my account 2 weeks later. I watched my banking app refresh and saw a balance that didn't seem real. I was a millionaire before I turned 27, and nobody in my family knew. I didn't buy a mansion. I didn't buy a sports car. I hired a financial advisor and invested most of it conservatively. I did buy a nice condo in a good neighborhood, fully furnished with new everything. I bought clothes that fit properly. I donated to causes I cared about. I lived comfortably, but not extravagantly. The secret felt good. For the first time in my life, I had something that was entirely mine, something my family couldn't diminish or claim or make about Victoria. My financial advisor had given me a folder of documents to review and sign. I grabbed them on my way out the door one morning, intending to look through them during lunch. Instead, I got pulled into back-to-back meetings. I shoved the folder in my purse thinking I'd deal with it later. Among those documents was a current portfolio statement showing my full balance. I completely forgot it was there until Victoria found it. Easter was approaching, and Mom called to insist I come for dinner. I usually avoided holidays, but something made me agree this time. Maybe I was feeling generous. Maybe I wanted to see them with my new perspective. Maybe I just wanted to prove to myself that their opinions didn't matter anymore. I drove to their house in my new car, nothing flashy, just a reliable luxury sedan. I parked on the street and walked up to the house where I'd grown up carrying a store-bought pie because I'd never been much of a baker. Victoria answered the door. She looked me up and down, and I saw the moment she registered my clothes were expensive, really expensive. Her eyes narrowed slightly. "Jennifer," she said, "you look different." "Thanks," I replied, stepping inside. "You look great too." The house was decorated for Easter with pastel everything. Chad was in the living room watching basketball with Dad. Mom was in the kitchen putting final touches on dinner. Victoria's two kids, Lily and Matthew, were running around hyped up on chocolate. I hugged my parents and tried to settle into the familiar discomfort of family gatherings. Dad asked about my job in the vague way he always did, not really listening to my answer. Mom complimented my blouse and asked where I got it. I said Nordstrom, and she looked surprised. "Splurging a bit," Victoria said from behind me. "Did you get a raise?" "Something like that," I replied. Dinner was the usual production. Victoria held court talking about Matthew's soccer team and Lily's dance recital. Chad contributed occasional comments about his dealership sales numbers. Mom and Dad nodded along, fully engaged. I ate ham and scalloped potatoes and felt like I was watching a play I'd seen too many times. After dinner, while Mom was serving pie, my phone rang. I glanced at it, my financial advisor. I excused myself to the back porch to take the call. It was nothing urgent, just a question about some paperwork I needed to sign. The conversation lasted maybe 5 minutes. When I came back inside, the atmosphere had changed. Victoria was standing in the hallway with my purse in her hands. My stomach dropped. "You left this on the chair," she said, her voice strange. "Your wallet fell out when I picked it up. Things spilled everywhere." She held up a bank statement that had fallen from the folder. The balance was clearly visible, $400,000 and change. The room went quiet. Mom's pie server clattered against the plate. Dad's eyes widened. Chad leaned forward. Victoria's face went through several emotions: shock, confusion, anger, then calculation. "Is this real?" Victoria demanded. I took the statement from her hand, folded it calmly, and put it back in my wallet. My heart was pounding, but my voice came out steady. "It's none of your business." "9 million, Mom's voice was faint. "Jennifer, where did you get 9 million? "I earned it," I said simply. Victoria laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. "You earned it. Doing what you work in computers. Programmers don't make $9 million. "This one did," I replied. "My company was acquired. That's my share." The silence that followed was deafening. I could see them all recalculating everything they thought they knew about me. The thrift store girl was a millionaire. The family disappointment had more money than any of them. Dad found his voice first. "Jennifer, that's wonderful. Truly, why didn't you tell us?" "Because it's my business," I said. "And because I knew this would happen." "What would happen?" Mom asked, looking hurt. "This," I gestured at their faces. "You've never cared about my success before. Why would I share this with you now?" Victoria's shock was transforming into something uglier. I could see the wheels turning, the entitlement rising to the surface. "After everything this family has done for you." Like what? I interrupted. "Please enlighten me. What has this family done for me?" "We raised you," Mom said. "You raised both of us. You paid for Victoria's entire college education while I worked myself into exhaustion to afford community college. You've celebrated every one of Victoria's accomplishments while barely acknowledging mine. You allowed her to mock me for years, calling me thrift store girl, like it was funny." "That was just teasing," Victoria said defensively. "It was cruel," I shot back. "And you all let it happen. You all participated." Chad, who'd been quiet, suddenly spoke up. "Jennifer, Victoria's just surprised. We all are. This is a lot to process. But family is family, right? And family helps each other." There it was, the real reason for the tension in the room. They wanted my money. Help each other. How, I asked, already knowing the answer. Victoria jumped in, her voice taking on a pleading quality that might have worked on me once. "Jennifer, Chad's dealership has been struggling. The economy, supply chain issues, you know how it is. We might lose the house. We have kids to think about. You don't have children, you don't have a husband, you don't have anyone depending on you. You have more money than you could ever spend. I stared at her, this woman who'd made my childhood miserable, who'd mocked my struggles, who'd never once asked if I was okay or needed help, and now she wanted my money. So let me get this straight, I said slowly. You want me to just give you my money? The money I earned while you were posting selfies on Instagram. The money I made while you quit your job to play housewife. You want me to hand over what I worked for because Chad made bad business decisions. It's not like that, Chad protested. It's a loan. We'd pay you back. No, you wouldn't, I said flatly. And even if you intended to, you couldn't. If you can't manage your own finances, why would I trust you with mine? Mom stepped forward, her face earnest. Jennifer, honey, please. Victoria is your sister. Those are your niece and nephew. You wouldn't let them lose their home, would you? How much are you asking for? I asked, genuinely curious about their audacity. Victoria and Chad exchanged glances. $500,000 would cover everything, Victoria said. The mortgage, the debt's enough to get us back on our feet. It's nothing to you. It's barely 5% of what you have, but for us, it would mean everything. I felt something shift inside me. All the years of being overlooked, dismissed, mocked. They crystallized into perfect clarity. These people didn't love me. They never had. I was just someone they kept around to feel better about themselves. And now that I had something they wanted, suddenly I was family. No, I said. Victoria blinked. What? No, I'm not giving you money. Not 500,000. Not 500. Not 5 cents. Her face flushed red. Are you serious? After everything. After everything. What? My voice rose. After you spent our entire childhood making me feel worthless. After you called me thrift store girl at every opportunity. After this family made it clear that I was worth less than you in every way that mattered. Now you want me to rescue you. We're family, Victoria shouted. Family supports each other, I said coldly. Family doesn't mock each other. Family doesn't play favorites. You want to know what family is. It's not this. It never was. Dad tried next, his voice taking on the authoritative tone he used when we were kids. Jennifer, you're being selfish. Your sister needs help, and you have the means to provide it. This is what decent people do. Something inside me snapped. I started laughing. I couldn't help it, the absurdity of it all. Them calling me selfish after a lifetime of their selfishness, it was too much. The laughter kept coming rolling out of me in waves. Decent people, I managed between laughs. Where were decent people when I was eating ramen for dinner so I could afford textbooks? Where was family when I was working 2 jobs and going to school full-time? Where was support when I was building a career from nothing? We didn't know you needed help, Mom said weakly. You didn't ask, I shouted, my laughter dying. You never asked because you didn't care. As long as Victoria was happy and successful and posting pretty pictures, I could suffer in silence. I was just the thrift store girl, remember? I wasn't worth your attention. Victoria's face was twisted with rage now. You're really going to let us lose everything. You're going to let your niece and nephew be homeless because you're petty and bitter. You're not going to be homeless, I said tiredly. You're being dramatic. Sell the house, downsize. Live within your means, like I had to. Figure it out like I had to. Work for it like I did. I have children, Victoria screamed. Then be a better example for them, I shot back. Show them that hard work matters. Show them that you can't just coast on charm and good looks. Show them that actions have consequences. Chad stood up, his face hard. You're making a big mistake. We're family. You're going to regret burning these bridges. I picked up my purse and headed for the door. They followed me, their voices overlapping, pleading and demanding and threatening all at once. Victoria grabbed my arm, her nails digging in. Please, she said. And for a second, she looked genuinely desperate. Jennifer, please. I'm sorry about the stupid nickname. I'm sorry I wasn't nice. I'm sorry, okay, I'm sorry. Just help us. Please. I looked at her. Really looked at her. She was still beautiful, still perfectly put together. But there was something frantic in her eyes. She'd built her entire life on a foundation of other people's money and goodwill, and now it was crumbling. I felt nothing. I'm sorry too, I said quietly. I'm sorry you're in this situation. I'm sorry you made choices that led here, but I'm not your bailout. I'm not your backup plan. I'm not the thrift store girl you can dismiss and ignore until you need something. I pulled my arm free and reached for the door handle. Victoria's apology transformed back into rage instantly. You selfish, she snarled. After everything we've done for you. We gave you a home, we fed you, we raised you, and this is how you repay us. You did the bare minimum that parents are legally obligated to do, I said. That doesn't entitle you to my money. Mom was crying now, Dad was red-faced and angry. Chad was pacing, and Victoria looked like she wanted to physically attack me. I opened the door. "Jennifer, if you walk out that door, you're not welcome back," Dad said, his voice hard. "If you choose money over family, you're no daughter of mine." I paused in the doorway and turned back to look at them. "You chose Victoria over me. My entire life," I said. "You chose appearances over substance. You chose comfort over fairness. You made your choice a long time ago. I'm just finally making mine." "You'll regret this," Victoria shouted after me. "When you're old and alone with nobody who loves you, you'll remember this moment. You'll remember that you chose money over your own family." I smiled at her, and it must have been a terrible smile because she took a step back. "I'd rather be alone with $9 million than surrounded by people who only love me for what I can give them." "Get out," Victoria screamed. "Get out and don't come back." "That's the plan," I said. She lunged forward and slammed the door in my face. I heard the deadbolt click through the door. I could hear shouting, crying the chaos of a family falling apart. I stood there for a moment waiting to feel something, regret, sadness, anything. Instead, I felt light. I walked to my car, got in, and drove away from that house for the last time. My phone started ringing before I'd made it to the Highway Victoria. I declined the call. She called again, declined again. I blocked her number. Then I blocked Mom's, then Dad's, then Chad's. The silence was beautiful. Over the next few weeks, they tried everything. Mom sent emails begging me to reconsider, saying Victoria was having breakdowns, that the stress was affecting the kids. Dad's emails started reasonable but grew increasingly angry when I didn't respond. Victoria created new email addresses when I blocked the old ones, her messages alternating between apologies and threats. Chad sent LinkedIn messages, Facebook friend requests from fake accounts, anything to get through to me. I ignored all of it. When Dad's lawyer sent a threatening letter about supposed inheritance claims, my lawyer sent a cease and desist letter that shut down that avenue immediately. The harassment eventually slowed and then stopped. I found out through a mutual acquaintance that Victoria and Chad did lose the house. They moved into a rental in a less prestigious neighborhood. Chad's dealership closed. Victoria had to get a job, actual employment, working retail at a mall. The gated community and the Instagram perfect life were gone. I felt a flicker of something that might have been sympathy, but it passed quickly. They'd made their choices. They'd built their lives on unsustainable foundations. Their financial problems weren't my responsibility to fix. What I did with my money was my business. I funded scholarships for students from low-income backgrounds studying computer science. I donated to organizations that helped women in tech. I invested in startups founded by people who reminded me of myself, hungry, talented, overlooked. I bought my grandmother's house when she went into assisted living. It was the one place from my childhood that held good memories. I renovated it carefully, keeping all the things that mattered. I live there now, surrounded by things I chose, things I earned, things that are truly mine. I started dating someone I met through work. Another developer with his own success story, someone who understood the value of hard work because he lived it too. When I told him about my family, he didn't tell me I should forgive them. He just held my hand and said, "Some people are family. Some people are related. There's a difference." 6 months after Easter, I got a wedding invitation. Victoria and Chad were renewing their vows in some kind of publicity stunt to show they were still strong. The invitation was addressed to Jennifer Hayes and guest. There was a handwritten note. "Despite everything, you're still my sister. I hope you'll come. We can talk." I threw it away without responding. A year after that Easter, I got a message from Victoria through a method she'd somehow found that I hadn't blocked yet. It was long, rambling, full of apologies that felt practiced rather than genuine. She talked about how hard things had been, how much she'd learned, how she understood now what I'd gone through. At the very end, she asked if we could meet for coffee. Not to ask for anything, she wrote, just to talk, just to try. I read it 3 times. I thought about the girl I'd been desperate for scraps of approval from people who'd never really seen me. I thought about the woman I'd become strong enough to walk away from people who diminished me. I deleted the message without responding. Some bridges aren't worth rebuilding. Some doors once slammed should stay closed. Some families are better left behind. I learned in therapy, yes, I went to therapy, because having money means being able to afford healing, that I'd spent my whole life trying to earn love that was never going to be freely given. I'd been performing for an audience that wasn't watching. The moment I stopped performing, stopped seeking their approval, I became free. The money didn't fix me. It gave me options, security, comfort, but it didn't heal the wounds. That work was harder and took longer. I had to unlearn the belief that I was worth less, that I deserved less, that I should be grateful for scraps. I am enough. I always was. The thrift store girl who cobbled together outfits from secondhand finds was just as valuable as the millionaire I became. The only difference is that now I know it. These days my life is quiet. I work on projects that interest me. I travel when I want to. I have friends who chose me not because of blood or obligation, but because they genuinely like who I am. I have a partner who thinks my thrift store finds are charming, who loves hearing stories about the vintage leather jacket I still have hanging in my closet. I built a life that's mine. Nobody can mock it or diminish it or claim credit for it. When I look in the mirror, I see someone who survived, who worked, who refused to let other people define her worth. Sometimes I wonder if my family thinks about that Easter dinner, if they replay the moment they discovered I was wealthy and immediately demanded I share it, if they understand why I laughed in their faces and walked away. Probably not. People like that rarely understand. They'll always believe they're entitled to what others have earned. They'll always think family means having claims on each other's success without having to contribute to it. But sometimes late at night, when I'm in the house that's truly mine, I remember standing in that doorway with Victoria screaming at me, telling me to get out. I remember the sound of that door slamming in my face, the finality of the deadbolt clicking into place. I remember how it felt to walk away. And I smile because the truth is, they did me a favor. They freed me from the last lingering obligation I felt toward them. They showed me one final time exactly who they were. They slammed the door on a relationship I'd been trying to preserve out of guilt and habit. And I walked away lighter than I'd ever been. The thrift store girl became a millionaire. The family disappointment became successful beyond anything they'd imagined. The girl they overlooked became someone they couldn't ignore. And when they finally noticed me, when they finally wanted something from me, when they finally needed what I built, I said no. That's the power nobody tells you about the power of walking away. The power of choosing yourself. The power of refusing to set yourself on fire to keep people warm who would never do the same for you. I don't regret it. Not for a second. Not when I'm lying in bed in my beautiful home. Not when I'm funding scholarships that help girls like I was. Not when I'm living a life I actually chose instead of one that was chosen for me. Victoria was right about one thing. Though it's not the way she meant it, I'm alone sometimes. But I'm not lonely. There's a difference. Loneliness is being surrounded by people who don't see you. Being alone is having space to breathe without apologizing for taking up room. I'll take alone over unloved any day. The last time I thought about reaching out was my birthday last year. I woke up to messages from friends, from my partner, from people who had chosen to be in my life. I thought about how different it was from birthdays past, when my family would give me practical gifts while Victoria got jewelry and trips. I thought about calling just for a second, just to see if anything had changed. Then I remembered Victoria's face when she saw my bank statement, the calculation in her eyes, the speed with which love turned to demands. I made pancakes instead and took myself out for a spa day. Some people spend their whole lives chasing approval from people who will never give it. Some people break themselves trying to fit into spaces that were never meant for them. Some people accept crumbs and call it love. I did that for 26 years. Now I live differently. Now I know better. Now I understand that walking away isn't giving up. It's growing up. My family used to call me the thrift store girl like it was an insult. They thought secondhand meant second rate. They thought bargain hunting meant bargain living. They thought that because I didn't have what they had, I was less than who they were. They were wrong about all of it. The thrift store girl learned to see value where others saw junk. She learned to take broken things and make them beautiful. She learned that worth isn't determined by price tags or family approval or Instagram likes. She learned to bet on herself and she won. So, no, I won't be reconciling with my family. I won't be funding Victoria's lifestyle or playing the role of family ATM. I won't be attending holidays or pretending everything's fine or accepting half-hearted apologies designed to manipulate rather than heal. I'll be here in my house, living my life, making my choices. I'll be the thrift store girl who became a millionaire and learned that some of the best things in life can't be bought, like self-respect, like genuine relationships, like the peace that comes from finally putting yourself first. They slammed the door in my face thinking it was punishment. It was freedom. And I've never looked back.